My girlfriend took my Black Friday savings to buy her ex a PS5, so I emptied the account and vanished from her life. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and if you looked at my bank account, you'd probably think I was allergic to fun. For months, I pinched every penny, skipped takeout, turned down nights out, even picked up extra shifts at the warehouse, all because I had this vision. Black Friday would be our clean slate. Our tiny apartment, with its secondhand couch and the TV that buzzed every time you turned it on, never felt like home to Alyssa. She wanted the warm lights, the smart gadgets, that magazine-perfect vibe her friends always posted on Instagram. And I wanted to give her that. Maybe prove I was the kind of boyfriend who could make things better, even if money was tight. I remember watching her scroll through her phone at night, saving videos of TikTok apartment makeovers, pointing out coffee machines or soundbars she swore would change everything. She'd smile, her eyes lighting up, and for a second I felt like I could actually pull this off. I kept thinking, just get through November, just make it to Black Friday, and I'll finally have enough. This was my shot to make up for a year of arguing over bills, broken promises, and the feeling I was never quite enough. Alyssa, trust me, this is going to be our year, I told her one night, trying to sound more confident than I felt. She just laughed and squeezed my hand. We'll see, she said, teasing, but there was hope in her voice. The countdown on my phone became an obsession. Every dollar I saved felt like a step closer to fixing us, to giving Alyssa something to brag about for once. I never questioned if she was as excited as I was. I just assumed she was. Now looking back, I wish I'd noticed the little signs I missed. But that night, all I could feel was hope, and I had no idea how close I was to losing everything. If you've ever lived paycheck to paycheck, you know how every little indulgence feels risky, like one wrong swipe could bring everything crashing down. Alyssa never seemed bothered by that. She'd tease me about being old man cheap, but behind the jokes, I knew she didn't understand the kind of anxiety that kept me up at night, counting and recounting every expense. Still, when we first talked about pooling our Black Friday savings, she seemed genuinely excited. Let's go big this year. We deserve it, she said, tapping her phone and adding a $1,000 TV to her digital wish list. We agreed. Both of us would put our extra savings into the joint account by Friday morning. I remember feeling nervous about it. Are you sure you want to do this? I asked her, trying to read her face for any hesitation. She rolled her eyes and nudged me with her shoulder. Don't be weird. I want this as much as you do, she insisted, laughing. The week crawled by. I worked extra hours. She came home with shopping bags, always claiming they were just little things or on sale. I wanted to trust her. Hell, I needed to. Maybe that was my first mistake. But every time I thought about us, I saw this Black Friday as the moment things would change. Alyssa promised she'd transfer her half by Thursday. I kept refreshing the account, waiting for the number to jump. I told myself not to be paranoid, not to let my doubts show. Love means trust, right? But even as I tried to push away the worry, I noticed her phone blowing up with notifications, late-night whispers with her friends, and a vague sense that something wasn't right. I convinced myself it was just nerves, nothing more. But if I'd listened to my gut, maybe I would have seen what was coming. The night before Black Friday felt like Christmas Eve when you're a kid, full of anticipation and restless energy. I'd lined up our plan with military precision, hit the electronics store at dawn, grab coffee from Alyssa's favorite spot, then work our way down the list we'd made together. She was on her phone for most of the evening, scrolling through deals, giggling at memes her friends sent her, and snapping photos of inspo rooms. At one point, she looked up and grinned at me. You're so serious, babe. Don't worry, tomorrow's gonna be epic. We ordered cheap pizza and ate on the floor, dreaming out loud about how we'd transform our cramped living room into something out of a YouTube vlog. Alyssa sprawled beside me, twirling her hair, talking about how she couldn't wait to have friends over, how this time, things would finally feel put together. For a while, it was like we were kids again, planning forts and adventures. She even asked if I'd mind her sleeping in just a bit, since she'd had a rough week at work. I teased her about missing the best deals, but deep down I didn't mind. I just wanted her to be happy. That night, I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and set an early alarm. As I drifted off, I watched the glow of her phone lighting up the room. Don't stay up too late, okay? I mumbled, half asleep. She laughed and promised, I won't. Just one more TikTok. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, but the apartment was silent. I reached for Alyssa, expecting her to still be cocooned in the blankets. But all I found was a cool, empty bed. Her phone charger dangled from the wall, unplugged. My stomach dropped, but I told myself not to overthink it. She probably just ran out for coffee. That's what I told myself, at first. But as the minutes ticked by, a strange sense of dread crept in. I sat there for 15 minutes, then 30. I tried calling Alyssa's cell straight to voicemail. I texted, "Everything okay? Where'd you go?" and watched the message sit unread. My mind spun with possibilities. Maybe she went to grab coffee. Maybe she was already in line somewhere trying to surprise me. Maybe her phone died. I made excuses because that's what you do when the truth is too hard to face. The apartment was eerily quiet, just the soft hum of the fridge and the faint traffic outside. Her keys were missing from the hook. The jacket she wore when she wanted to look cute but comfy was gone too. I started pacing, checking my phone every few seconds. No new notifications, no missed calls. On impulse, I opened our banking app. I didn't expect to see anything different. I just needed to feel in control. But the moment the screen loaded, my chest tightened. The joint account, the one we'd been saving for months, was at zero. Every last cent was gone. I scrolled through the transaction history in disbelief. There was a massive withdrawal, time-stamped hours before dawn. My heart hammered in my chest. I read the line over and over, willing it to be a mistake. I called the bank, trying to sound calm. The woman on the line confirmed it. The money had been withdrawn from a nearby ATM, all in one go. She asked if I wanted to dispute it, but I couldn't even process her words. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I stared at our empty apartment, the half-broken coffee table, the thrift store lamp Alyssa always complained about, the echo of her laughter still lingering in the walls. For a moment, I thought I might throw up. I wanted to believe there was some explanation, something I'd missed. But deep down, a cold, heavy certainty settled over me. Alyssa was gone, and so was everything I'd saved for. That's when I realized my perfect Black Friday had turned into my worst nightmare. I kept pacing the living room, replaying every conversation, every promise Alyssa and I had ever made. My phone trembled in my hand as I scrolled through our texts, desperate for a clue, some innocent explanation I could cling to. Nothing. Her last message was a heart emoji and "can't wait for tomorrow." It read like a cruel joke now. I sat on the edge of our lumpy couch, heart pounding, mind racing. Was she mugged? Did something happen to her? Or the thought I didn't want to face. Did she just take the money and run? I started calling our mutual friends, asking if they'd seen her. Most sounded half awake, confused, and promised to check in. My best friend Sam tried to calm me down over speakerphone. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding, man. Maybe she needed to grab something last minute. But his voice was uncertain. I knew he was picturing the same scenarios I was. I scrolled through Alyssa's socials for any sign of life. Nothing new, just the same old photos of us, smiling, blissfully ignorant. The truth kept slamming into me, wave after wave. I'd worked so hard to build a future for us. I thought if I just saved enough, sacrificed enough, maybe she'd finally feel secure with me. Instead, the emptiness in my bank account now matched the emptiness in my chest. The humiliation hit even harder than the loss. How do you tell people your girlfriend just vanished with your savings? A slow ache spread through my body, something deeper than anger or shock, a sense of being played, of being the last to know. My head throbbed with regret for every warning sign I'd brushed aside. I tried to steady my breath, gripping the edge of the coffee table until my knuckles turned white. I realized then that the real pain wasn't losing the money. It was knowing Alyssa had chosen to leave me out in the cold, and even then, I still wanted to believe I was wrong. By noon, I was still in the same spot, phone clutched so tight my fingers ached. My head felt foggy, sick with anxiety and exhaustion. I started scrolling through Alyssa's Instagram again, looking for anything, some accidental clue she'd left behind. That's when I saw it, a new like on one of her old photos from Tyler, her ex. I'd always hated that name. Tyler was the story she used to tell me, how she'd learned to never trust guys who treat you like a backup plan. She swore they hadn't talked in ages, but over the last few weeks his name kept popping up. Little things, an offhand comment about running into him at the store, or his handle showing up in her recently viewed. I tried to laugh it off, trusting her. But now the timing made my skin crawl. Curiosity took over. I dug deeper, checked her most recent follows, skimmed her tagged photos, searched her Twitter replies. Buried between meme retweets and generic replies was a heart emoji she'd dropped on one of Tyler's posts just days ago. I felt my jaw tighten, a hot pulse of anger rising in my throat. I started piecing together every moment I'd shrugged off. The late-night texts, the sudden secrecy with her phone, the way she'd become obsessed with getting the best deal on something she never named. And then it hit me. Tyler had been whining for months online about not being able to find a PS5. I remembered Alyssa laughing at his posts once, saying, "He's so dramatic." But now I wondered what she hadn't said out loud. The realization landed like a punch. All my savings, everything we'd built up for our home, had gone to buy her ex a gaming console. I could barely breathe, let alone think straight. The betrayal felt so much bigger, so much more deliberate than I'd let myself imagine. But as I sat there, shaking with rage, I knew I needed proof. I spent the next hour in full detective mode, numb and robotic. I texted Alyssa's best friend, Jade, someone I'd always trusted to be blunt with me. My thumbs hesitated over the keyboard, but desperation won out. "Have you heard from Alyssa?" She's not answering. Money's missing. It took a while, but finally those 3 little dots started blinking. She's fine. Don't freak out. She said she'd explain. But the tone was off, guarded, almost rehearsed. I pressed for more. "Jade, please. I need to know what's going on." Did she say anything about Tyler? The response came slower this time. "Look, she just wanted to do something nice for an old friend. Don't make it weird." "She's coming back." My chest caved in. I'd been right. Even Jade, Alyssa's human shield, the one person who could usually talk sense into her, was dodging the truth. I scrolled through group chats, looking for anything that could explain the money's disappearance. That's when I saw a new message in one of the friend threads, a blurry selfie of Alyssa, eyes gleaming, shopping bags in hand. The caption was a dagger. Guess who finally got his PS5? Best ex ever. Comments rolled in, heart emojis, jokes about upgrades, even a few teasing her about being too generous. Every last shred of hope disintegrated. I realized then I wasn't her partner. I was her ATM. I stared at her smiling face, the bags in her hand, bags that should have been filled with things for our apartment. For us. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room, but all I could do was sit in the silence, breath shallow, ears ringing. The world around me felt suddenly fake, like I'd stumbled into someone else's life. The person I loved most had chosen to humiliate me. For him. And for the first time, I felt something colder than heartbreak, pure, burning resolve. The anger set in fast, hot, and dizzying. For a while, I just paced our living room, the silence broken only by my ragged breathing. Every shadow in that apartment, the peeling wallpaper, the thrift store lamp, the scuffed coffee table, felt like it was mocking me for being so blind. I replayed Alyssa's laughter in my head, the way she'd told me not to worry, how she'd insisted this Black Friday was our chance. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how perfectly she'd played me. I picked up my phone, staring at her contact. I wanted to call and scream, demand an answer, demand she bring the money back. But I stopped myself. What good would that do? She'd already made her choice. Instead, I called my bank. My voice shook as I explained what happened, hoping there was some loophole, some way to reverse the damage. The woman on the line was kind, but her answer was cold. The funds were gone. Withdrawn using the card only Alyssa and I had access to. There was nothing they could do. The helplessness threatened to swallow me, but underneath it, something new was forming. A hard edge, a line I didn't know I had in me. If Alyssa thought she could just walk away, leaving me humiliated and broke, she was wrong. I wasn't about to be the fool in her story. I sat down, opened every account, every bill, every shared password we had. Quietly, methodically, I started changing things, resetting passwords, removing my name where I could, making sure there was nothing else she could touch. I didn't care if she noticed. In fact, I hoped she would. For the first time in hours, I felt a tiny spark of control return. If she wanted a clean break, I'd give her one she'd never forget. And as I shut off the lights, I started planning exactly how I'd make her regret ever crossing me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Alyssa's smile, felt her hand in mine, heard her promise that this was our year. The betrayal twisted deeper, but now there was a coldness inside me, a clarity I'd never felt before. I realized I didn't have to beg or blow up her phone or chase after what she'd stolen. No, the smartest thing I could do was vanish from her world just as easily as she'd vanished from mine. The next morning, I started my revenge, not with shouting or drama, but with silence. I opened my laptop and checked every account we'd ever shared, streaming services, delivery apps, even her old email she used for discount codes. Every password was changed, every account scrubbed clean. I deleted myself from the lease, called the landlord, and arranged to end the contract early. My name was off every bill by noon. The only thing I kept was my emergency savings account, one Alyssa didn't know about, something I'd tucked away after a bad breakup years before. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a new place, enough to give me a fresh start. I moved what little I had left from the joint account into my personal savings, draining it dry. By midday, I started boxing up my clothes, my old photos, the cheap bookshelves I'd built myself. It was weird, liberating even. Each item I packed felt like I was shedding a layer of humiliation. There were no angry texts from Alyssa, no calls, no apology. Just silence. It was like she expected me to just take it, to sit and wait for her to decide when she wanted to face me. But I was done waiting. I'd made my move, quietly and completely, and as I taped up the last box, I braced myself, because I knew the real confrontation was still coming. It was 2 days before I heard anything. I'd spent that time in a fog, packing up the last of my life, avoiding neighbors' questions, barely eating. My phone was eerily quiet until suddenly, there she was. Alyssa, standing in the doorway, holding coffee and a bakery bag like it was any normal morning. She grinned, that practiced smile I used to find irresistible. "I got you your favorite," she said, stepping inside as if nothing had happened. My hands were shaking as I took the coffee, trying to read her face. "Where were you?" I managed, voice rough. She waved her hand, dismissing it. Long story. Black Friday was insane. Lines everywhere. My phone died. She tossed her hair, laughing off the tension. "You know how it is." I watched her carefully. She kept up the act, rambling about crazy shoppers, complaining about rude cashiers, even joking about all the good stuff being gone. Not once did she mention the money, or Tyler, or the fact that I'd been calling and texting nonstop. She flopped onto the couch and scrolled through her phone like we were still a team. Finally, I confronted her. "Alyssa, the money's gone. The account's empty." "What did you do?" For a split second, something flickered in her eyes, fear maybe, or guilt. But she recovered instantly. "What are you talking about? You probably messed up the transfer. You always get the numbers wrong." Her tone was light, but she couldn't meet my eyes. My anger built, but she doubled down, even accusing me of being paranoid. "Why would I take the money? You really think I'd do that?" I almost doubted myself, her gaslighting so smooth it made my head spin. I was so used to believing her, letting her reality override mine. But this time, I had proof. And I could see in her nervous glance, she knew it too. As she sat there pretending, I realized the girl I loved was a master at lies, and for the first time, I wasn't going to let her win. I stared at Alyssa, my anger swirling with exhaustion. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots, her group chat with Jade and the others, her selfie with the shopping bags, the posts about Tyler's new PS5. I handed her the phone, my voice barely above a whisper. "Don't lie to me, Alyssa. I know everything." For the first time since she walked in, her mask cracked. Her hand trembled as she scrolled through the evidence, eyes darting between me and the screen. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, but the words were weak. "Tyler was going through a rough patch and I just wanted to do something nice. He's my friend. You're overreacting." She tried to push the phone back at me, but I held her gaze, silent. "Do you realize what you've done?" I said, my voice steady, almost cold. "You took everything we had, everything I saved. For him, for your ex. And then you lied to my face." Her lips trembled, the bravado draining from her expression. She shook her head, then switched tactics. Tears, apologies, promises that she'd pay me back and that it didn't mean anything. I'd heard it all before, and it only made me angrier. The humiliation of knowing I'd been played, of picturing her shopping with my money, the betrayal painted all over her face. It was too much. I felt something in me break, something I'd been holding together for years. "Pack your things," I said quietly. "You can stay with your friends or Tyler. You're not staying here." Alyssa stared at me in disbelief, as if she hadn't thought I'd ever stand up for myself. For a second, I almost caved, the old habit of wanting to fix things. But this time, I didn't move. She left the apartment with nothing but her purse, her eyes red and shining. The door shut behind her, and with it, any hope I had left. But the pain was only just beginning. The silence after Alyssa left was almost worse than the fight itself. I stood in the middle of our apartment, now just mine, listening to the echo of her footsteps fade down the hall. For a while, I couldn't move. I watched dust motes drift through the sunlight, felt the weight of every empty corner. The TV, the old couch, the cheap bookshelf I'd built with my own hands, all felt hollow now, reminders of how I'd failed to see this coming. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at her contact photo. I thought about calling my mom or Sam or anyone who might say something to make this feel less final. But the shame was a knot in my chest, tightening every time I thought about admitting what had happened. How do you tell people you lost everything, your savings, your relationship, your dignity, because you trusted someone too much? I let my mind spiral. Bills unpaid, groceries running low, the rent due in just 2 weeks. My hands shook as I tried to plan next steps, but I kept getting stuck on Alyssa's face as she walked out. The betrayal replayed in endless loops, her secret smiles, her late-night texting, every promise I'd believed. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the apartment sounded like footsteps coming back. I kept hoping for a knock at the door, for some miracle explanation. But there was nothing, just my own breath in the darkness and the weight of what I'd lost. It hit me then, how little I had left. No money, no partner, and not even the comfort of my own trust. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly alone. And as dawn crept in, I realized rock bottom wasn't a place. It was a feeling, and I was living in it. It was a few days before I found the energy to do anything besides work and sleep. I kept replaying everything, every minute detail, searching for a reason to get up. The apartment felt like a tomb. Her perfume still hung in the bathroom, and one of her hair ties was on the dresser, mocking me every time I passed it. But while I was digging through an old drawer, looking for stamps to mail out rent checks I couldn't afford, I found a faded envelope with my handwriting, for emergencies only. Alyssa never knew about my emergency fund. It wasn't much, just a few $100s I'd started saving after my last breakup, stuffing away birthday money and tiny bonuses where no one would find them. I'd almost forgotten it existed. But holding that envelope, I felt the faintest spark of hope. It wouldn't fix everything, not by a long shot, but it was enough to get me moving. Enough to keep me from drowning. I opened my laptop, checking the separate bank account I'd linked to the emergency fund. It was still there, untouched. I remembered every time Alyssa had teased me about being paranoid, about having trust issues. But right then, I was grateful for every ounce of caution I'd ever had. That tiny stash was my lifeline. Suddenly, the world felt a fraction less hopeless. I could make rent, buy groceries, maybe even crash on a friend's couch for a while if I needed. I started making a list: what to sell, who to call, what bills to pay first. It wasn't much, but it was something. As I sat back, breathing a little easier, another idea crept in. If Alyssa could wipe me out and walk away, maybe I could do the same to her. Not out of spite, but to finally take control. To disappear from her life as completely as she had from mine. And just like that, I stopped feeling powerless. The decision hit me in the middle of the night, sudden, sharp, and impossible to ignore. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every muscle tense with adrenaline. Alyssa thought she'd closed the book on us, but she'd forgotten something. I still had access to our joint account. She hadn't bothered to change the login, maybe because she didn't think I'd ever fight back. Maybe she just assumed I'd sit in the ruins she left and wait for her to feel sorry. At sunrise, I got up, poured myself the last of the coffee, and powered up my laptop. The emptiness of the apartment pressed in on me, but for the first time in days, I felt calm. My hands moved with purpose. I logged in and moved every cent from the joint account into my personal emergency fund. Every dollar of the rent refund, the grocery credit, even the leftovers from Alyssa's own deposits. I left the account at 0, exactly how she'd left me. Then I went to work erasing myself. I texted my landlord, told him I was breaking the lease, and paid the penalty up front. I set up mail forwarding to a friend's address, canceled every subscription, every delivery, everything Alyssa might try to access. I packed the last of my clothes, my photos, my books, and left her the keys on the counter. No note, no explanation. Nothing for her to chase or guilt trip me about. By afternoon, I was on the road to a different city, one where she'd never find me. I didn't tell anyone except Sam, who promised to keep my secret. It felt reckless, maybe even petty, but it was the only thing that felt right. I was finally doing something for myself, not out of spite, but out of survival. The sun was setting behind me, the city shrinking in the rearview mirror when it hit me. I was really, truly free, and I had no intention of ever looking back. My phone lit up before I even crossed the city line. At first, it was just a single message. Alyssa, all casual. Hey, did you move some money? The account's empty. Call me. I ignored it, kept driving, heart pounding but steady. An hour later, my notifications exploded. Calls, texts, voicemails stacking one on top of the other. The tone shifted fast, from annoyance to anger to frantic pleading. I know you took it. This isn't funny. Please just answer me. Then I'm sorry, okay? I messed up. I need you to talk to me. Her friends started chiming in too, accusing me of being childish, of abandoning her when she needed me most. Screenshots and guilt trips, group chats lighting up with her side of the story, painting herself as the victim, the heartbroken girlfriend left with nothing. For a while, I almost responded. Old habits die hard, and I could still hear her voice in my head, telling me I was being dramatic, telling me I should just let it go. But every time I reached for my phone, I remembered her beaming, holding those shopping bags for Tyler, my sacrifice handed to someone who never cared about me. So I blocked her. I blocked her friends. I deleted every chat, every old photo, every trace of her number. My world got quieter, lighter with each tap. I felt grief, yes, but also something I hadn't felt in a long time, relief. For once, I wasn't the one begging for scraps of affection or explanations. As I watched the city disappear in my rear view, the buzzing phone finally silent, I realized the power of absence. She could chase closure with her ex and her shiny new PS5 me. I was finally learning how to live without her shadow. Starting over in a new city wasn't easy, but it was the best thing I ever did for myself. At first, I crashed with Sam's cousin in a cramped spare room, living out of boxes, cooking cheap pasta on a hot plate. But each day felt lighter, like I was shaking off a heavy coat I didn't know I'd been wearing. I found a job at a small tech shop, the kind of place where people remembered your name, not just your paycheck. I got used to silence, not the suffocating quiet of heartbreak, but the peaceful kind, where nobody was waiting to take advantage of me. I spent evenings walking unfamiliar streets, learning to trust myself again. I let the betrayal hurt, but I didn't let it define me. I called my mom finally and told her the truth, not just about Alyssa, but about how lost I'd felt for months. She cried a little, then told me she was proud I'd finally put myself first. Even Sam, the eternal skeptic, said, "Dude, you finally did what you should have done years ago." Months slipped by, and I started rebuilding piece by piece. New apartment, new friends, even the old emergency fund started to grow again. I blocked Alyssa everywhere, but sometimes mutual friends would send me updates. The last one made me pause. Tyler had dumped her, sold the PS5 for cash, and ghosted her. Apparently, Alyssa tried to reach out again, but I never replied. Not once. Her chapter in my life was over, written in betrayal and silence. Now when I wake up, I don't check my phone for apology texts. I don't dread the next surprise or the next lie. I just breathe, grateful for my own company, for the space I finally earned. Sometimes, the best revenge is no revenge at all, just freedom and the quiet knowledge that you never have to go back.